Thank you very much for coming to our presentation. We're going to be talking about a little bit about managing Apple devices through automation. Here we're going to be kind of considering just like tools for any marginal gain to make sure your jobs is easier and just things that we've automated in our environment. First of all, let's go ahead and get started with some introductions. My name is Oscar Reyes. I graduated from Texas A&M University back in 2018 with a computer engineering degree. I'm part of the central Apple team for Texas A&M. We manage about 3,500 devices on campus, and I'm one of the few 400 level certified admins on campus.
Hey everyone, Andrew Barnett, also on the central Apple device team for campus. I originally was from Indiana and graduated from Purdue University, but moved down to Texas A&M, and now working with Oscar and a few others on the team. Currently 300 Jamf certified, and excited to show you guys a few of the tools we brought.
Let's get started. So a little bit of what to expect here. We're going to be talking about what we look for, what's our philosophy whenever it comes to automation. The tools that we've used from whenever we started, so the smallest things up to what we are doing now for patching, for example, in labs. Then we're going to give you some examples of how that is working, and then at the end we're going to have some questions and answers, some Q&As. So what's our philosophy for all this? Our goal is to make sure our lives is easier so that you kind of have the best bang for your buck, per se. A little bit of work in the beginning of something is better than having to just keep like doing a lot of stuff continuously. So a little bit of effort in the beginning will save you a lot of time later. Another thing we try to make sure that we are doing is maximum benefit for minimum effort. Essentially, automating as much as you can so you can focus your time on other things that need your attention or things that you are more interested in instead of like day-to-day just menial stuff that comes in that is just repetitive. Another thing we need to make sure of is that we always try to look for the right tool for the job. Either by Googling or whatever you need to do, find the right tool for whatever you need to do. And if you cannot find it, either you make it, or if you find something that kind of is there, you can modify it. So that's where the open source community comes into play a little bit. In the end, we are a small team, so we kind of don't really have a choice. We have to figure out ways to make our lives easier, automate so that we can focus on the things that come in on a day-to-day basis and be able to compete with all the different priorities and figure out what to do first. So our philosophy in automation just leads us to see what are we looking for in our tools and the stuff that we implement. So on our campus, we have the central team and also distributed admins across campus. So we try to get tools and things for streamlining everybody's workflow, so either for us or for them out there, so they're able to help our customers, the staff, faculty, and staff, and anything that they can need. Another thing we also look for is to improve users' experience. So anything that can make it easier for our users to have a better experience, either with updates or just using the computer on a daily basis, being able to reach out to support, that kind of stuff. Organizational goals is another big thing that we have to kind of keep in mind whenever we're doing all this kind of stuff. We always have to kind of abide, by what we're trying to do at the time, either compliance or whatever it is that our leadership is trying to achieve, and we are trying to help achieve those goals. Another thing, public university. So cost savings is a big thing for us. We want to make sure that we're not wasting tax dollars, and henceforth, we also look into the open source community a lot because there's a lot of good tools out there that are just kind of free to use. And if there's something that maybe it's not exactly what you need, you can also either fork it and modify it, or just kind of talk to other people and see if maybe somebody has better choices for you. So how did we start at the very, very beginning when we first started learning Jamf? Just baby Mac admins and the kind of things that we looked for. So in the beginning, it's just kind of basic applications, just what will make my life easier for moving, for example, one package from one server to another, We did a migration last year, so that was a big thing. We had 18 servers that were moving into one. So we had to make sure to figure out what's the best way to make sure that all these things that were moving around are moved in the most efficient way possible. We started learning scripting, Bash, sometimes a little bit of Python, but for the most part, we do a lot of Bash. Googling a lot of answers, Googling a lot of issues that we've had. Has anybody else encountered an issue? And is there a tool out there that may already help us to do stuff that we need? Reaching out and learning from others that already have more experience than us. There's a lot of open source things out there. And so we started looking into how people are doing stuff in their scripts, how other things like, for example, Installameter is something that we use, how things are being done in scripts like that. And just to make sure that if anything that we built in our environment, that we're doing it in the best way possible. Which Installameter leads kind of to the open source tools. We've been looking into a lot of applications and open source projects just to see what will make our life just quicker, easier, either in patching, compliance, just user experience, or just helping the Mac admin or other Mac admins across campus just be able to support the our customers. If a tool doesn't really do exactly what we need it to do, you can help modify it. Andrew has actually helped in developing a little bit of app auto patch, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And if we don't have a tool if we don't find something, then we create it. We just make our script. Bash is a great tool, and so that's kind of where we're at this point in time. So let's talk a little bit about the tools that we have in our environment, things that we use on a day-to-day basis. I'm gonna start from like the most smallest thing, marginal gain, up to the automation. These first three that I'm gonna show you are literally just clipboard managers. So whenever you are going back and forth with serial numbers, asset tags, like between Windows, Jamf servers, and stuff like that, you wanna have a clipboard manager on your device. These little tools essentially keep track of everything you've copied. They have options to make sure that you exempt password managers, so the passwords are not saved there. Just kind of, it's up to your preference. This first one is my personal favorite nowadays. It's called Mackie. This little guy, essentially, when you activate it, it comes up from your cursor, and it just kind of pops up there. You can choose whichever you want, whatever you were doing, and just paste whatever thing you need to paste without having to go back and forth between Windows, Jamf Windows, browsers, whatever it is. This second one is another one. This one's one that Andrew's been using for a long time. This one lives at the top menu bar, so if that's your preference, that's another thing. That's another one you can grab. Essentially, same thing, just a clipboard manager, and whenever you need to go something, go to the top, select from your list whatever it is, and paste it wherever you need. This third one we've actually both used in conjunction with the ones that we have right now. This one has a nice little window that shows you a preview of everything that you've copy-pasted. And so this one's nice, and essentially just kind of the same thing, just depending on what you like. Just choose whatever you like. Now let's start getting into the more Jamf-specific tools. Jamf CPR. So I mentioned before we were doing a migration from 18 servers into one. This thing came in handy to make sure that we had servers, the packages from each server being migrated into the local, the central server. This thing helps you essentially download packages or move them from one server to another. Excuse me. So we actually use this one to download a lot of packages, investigate with suspicious package, and that's what I'm gonna show later, just to kind of figure out, okay, what's going on here? Why are these packages? What are these packages doing, and how do we make sure that they're still good for when we migrate, or can we do them better? Can we make them better? Another thing for helping you just kind of streamline your process, Jamf Migrator. Again, 18 servers into one was a big thing, so finding the best and easiest tools to migrate everything into the central server was very important. This little guy over here, essentially you put source server, destination server, and you see down there a list of things that you can migrate. There is a little caveat with this tool. You have to be very careful of your order of operations because, for example, let's say you have nested smart groups. You have a smart group and then you have things inside the smart group that depend on other just groups, smart groups. You have to make sure that you migrate the things inside up until like you go like from the deepest level to the highest level. Otherwise, your migrations will fail. Same thing with policy. So for example, if a policy is under a category, let's just say cats, for for an example, right? But the cats category doesn't exist in your new server, that migration might fail, and you will probably have to migrate the category and then the policy. But this tool is really great. Suspicious package. This one, you open up a package, you can see what's in it and figure out how their package is being built, what scripts are they running, what payloads do they have, and it just makes your life easier to see what you need to do with a package. See if you need to replicate, or can you just copy it just how it is. Whatever it is you have to do with the package, just lets you see what's inside of it. Apparency. So this is like a utility that takes over your preview of your Mac. So whenever you press an application, you press space, and it gives you like some information on the Mac, on the application. This takes over and it shows you the window on the right, which gives you a little bit more Mac admin related information, namely the main space, the com dot whatever it is. I like that because it gives you that. You don't have to go in terminal, do anything weird. It's not that terrible, but like instead of typing all that, you can just press space and you get it. Then if you actually analyze the application, you can go check the plist or things that the application has. What else was there? Just like configuration, and it's just a really great tool, honestly. App Cleaner. Whenever you're testing and installing and uninstalling stuff, this little thing, you drag and drop an application into into this other application, and it looks for everything that it put on your device and just gives you the option of nuking all of it, which is great, especially if you're testing something that maybe the normal move to trash doesn't really clean everything, or like it's not contained properly, or if there's a uninstall script that doesn't clean the whole installation. We've definitely had those experiences. This thing takes care of just drag it into here, looks for all the configurations that manage the plist, configs and whatever, and just cleans it for you. So this is more like a testing kind of thing. And we've also recommended it to other Mac admins on campus just for whatever they're doing on a daily basis. Icons. Instead of searching for a icon for whatever application you're trying to deploy, install it on your device, drag and drop it into this thing, and it'll just give you the icons immediately. One for installing, one for uninstalling, and then a third one that's an uninstall little GIF that's kind of shaking. And you can just upload that into Jamf, and that's your icon for whatever you need to do or whatever you need to deploy, which is really nice. This is for the more security-minded people, Jamf Compliance Editor. So there's different types of, security guidelines, let's call it. For us, we use NIST for the most part. There's the CIS benchmarks. But this tool by Jamf essentially gives you a whole list of either scripts, configuration profiles, and instructions of, hey, you need to enable, if you want to enable XYZ based on your security configuration, this is how you do it. And you can also make specific configurations where you say, I want, for example, this 10 configurations on this here. You just kind of check whatever you want, and it'll output a PDF, an Excel sheet, scripts, configuration profiles, just to make sure that all of those you can just grab and put into Jamf. Or if you're feeling confident and you know exactly that everything's going to work exactly as you need it to work, you can upload it directly into the Jamf server. But that's up to you. I'll leave it up to that. I typically like to check just to make sure regardless, right? But this tool just is helpful depending on the type of security stuff that you want to do. Recently, we've been using this for FIPS compliance, for example, to just make sure that things are configured properly on the Mac side. Support app. This one's more for our distributed teams and also the customers. This is a utility. It lives on your top menu bar. For us, this comes out from the little thumb that you see in the middle. The top half is just kind of information of your computer, so that Mac admins, if they're doing support or anything, They don't have to go look into about or anything like that to get information on your computer. This is easy, and just they have the serial number, computer name, OS, what Wi-Fi or Ethernet they're connected to, when did they reboot, was it actually yesterday, was it actually a year ago, and then the bottom part of things, that's kind of more for the users. This is for allowing them to do a health check, what we call, that's essentially like a list of what, recon, policy, and Jamf Protect in our environment. Andrew's gonna show something later for that. They can request admin and just contact our help desk a lot easier with this kind of stuff. App Schema Builder. I don't know if you guys have maybe seen that there's these nice like GUI-based like uploads that you can make into Jamf for configuration profiles for configuring applications. And instead of using a plist that looks like this, it'll look like that. And so it just has like nice little entries when it tells you, hey, this is what you put in here, this is where you're configuring. And that Manage App Schema Builder helps you build this. And so this is a JSON configuration that you upload into Jamf. And once it's uploaded, it turns out and looks something like this. So it's easier to fill things out and keep track. I will say there are a lot of things that have been already built by the community out there. And so if you check their GitHub, they give you links right there to go check things that have already been built so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But this one's a lifesaver. Health check. This little thing was actually built by Andrew over here. This is what it looks like just whenever they go and press health check. This is an automation that essentially takes inventory, so it does a policy check. It can do protect, so that you don't have to have it, like there's an option to turn that off if it's not in your environment. And then at the end, it submits inventory. Now, let's be a little bit real here. The taking inventory and submitting inventory is technically just a recon at the top and a recon at the bottom, just to make sure that, okay, computer check-in with the inventory, make sure that everything is up to date with whatever you need to be, like if you need to be in a smart group, you need a configuration profile, whatever that is, right? Then a policy check to install anything that may or may not need to be installed. The protect thing is just for our environment, make sure that things are working properly. And then at the end, if something got installed, that's why the other recon exists. And just does that all in one go. And on the bottom right, there's the little help thing where you can just put your information for your help desk or whatever you need. Set up your Mac. This is it's like a tool, a GUI tool as well. Check out the GitHub because essentially this thing is to help you in your deployment of your operating systems. Somebody logs in, they are given some options, and they can, for example, we have, I think, like a basic one that's just security tools that you have to have regardless of whatever you need. Like whatever you want, you have to have these tools. So you don't really have an option on that one. But then there's the, let's just say like general, and you can kind of select that to do like Zoom, Microsoft Office, Teams, that kind of stuff, just like extra that a lot of people need, but maybe you don't have the time to just go through all of that right now, so you just do the basic. And then it just kind of installs everything for you in a nice little GUI, shows you the progress. Andrew will show you a little bit about that later. Install-O-Meter. This one is one of the, this is essentially a small script, and by small I mean massive, because this thing has about 600 to 700 applications in there, and this script, you can use it, you can set it up to and just install third-party software in your environment. And so this is what we used at the very beginning. We had it set up so that it would do updates in like a silent manner, a mandated like monthly update, and then also this is what we use to deploy stuff through self-service. So instead of uploading packages, we just use this, which makes the server lighter per se, to an extent. App Auto Patch. So this kind of works on top of Install-O-Meter. This tool creates a little GUI, and it starts analyzing your computer. And so this is per device. Analyzes your computer and says, okay, these are the list of applications that you have on your device. And It takes care of using Installator to update all those applications that are specifically to your device. And so once it's done and analyzing your computer, this is what it looks like once it starts updating. And so it starts going through the list and just taking care of updates. And this thing is nice because, like I mentioned, in Installator, we were using maybe 3 policies. This will help us reduce the amount of policies in the server to maybe just keep the one in self-service, which will reduce load on the server, but then just it'll take care of just updates the same way for devices across our environment. Superman. This is our current tool of choice and also testing for macOS updates, enforcing updates. So another one you can kind of look into is Nudge, but right now this is the one that we're trying in our environment to enforce updates, and I'm just going to talk about that a little bit later. Finally, Bash. Just Bash in general as a tool. If there's something that maybe is not created that you need, you can just kind of write it and make it do whatever you want. This script is just a random script that I had. I just put it on there. It's not really a big deal, so don't pay attention to it. But essentially Bash, right? At the end of the day, a lot of stuff just runs on Bash on our Macs and our system. So we also make a lot of automation scripts, and a few of them that we have worked on is, for example, this one for Protect. This is something that I had to work with security to get set up. This workflow takes care of making sure that you're always installing the latest version of Gem Protect regardless of anything. And so it's a backup to the deployment that Gem Protect actually does just automatically. So they have configurations to keep things up to date and stuff like that. But sometimes computers just stop talking to the Gem Protect server for whatever reason. And so a workflow was made so that instead of waiting for like a month to get a report from Gem Protect server of, oh, these computers are not talking, at 2 weeks there's a repair that uses this script as well to make sure that you reinstall the version of Gem Protect that fixes the connection to the server, and the computer's again back in like a compliant state without us having to wait for a month and just like check and see what's happening. No, it's just like something falls into a smart group and it'll just run as soon as things are ready. But then for this specific one, for just installing this one, I believe is it's just scope to everybody, just goes. And then if you don't have the latest version of Protect, it'll just install the latest version of Protect for you. And that's kept track in just patch management. Within Jamf itself, you can this specific smart group is just based on that. And it updates automatically based on their patch management that they maintain, so you don't really have to do anything, it just kind of does it. Another of the tools that I've had to work with security is Elastic. We've been testing this system as well. So for their testing, they've been needing to do different types of deployments. So for this script, we were able to kind of get their documentation. They sent me whatever they needed. And essentially I made this workflow just to make sure that they can change their token, their enrollment token, and what's the other one? URL token, I believe is the other one. But essentially those two tokens define how you are going to install Elastic on the system. And depending on those tokens, it actually turns out that it installs different components of Elastic in general. In the end also, since they keep track of the version and what's the version that they need to install, or what's the latest that's allowed to be installed, you can also kind of modify that to your liking, and you kind of just keep track of that just to keep Elastic updated. Go ahead.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we use some of the tools and go a little bit more in depth. So it might be a little repetitive from some of the things that Oscar mentioned, but we just wanted to show you guys a little bit more of how we do things and how they're actually being used. So the first one, like Oscar mentioned, was how we're using Installator. Like Oscar said, it's basically a giant bash script that you can set different parameters for certain packages and whatnot if you've never used it before. There's other things like if you want to block processes for it, say if you want to notify the user or other things like that. How we're using it is together with App Auto Patch. So like Oscar was saying, we thinned out some of the policies we had before. So they're actually running silently in the background daily. And then there's actually a scoping in the background that goes off the patch management that shows if they're not in that latest version, they just automatically get set in there on a daily basis. And so it'll just get checked every single day. If they're using it, it'll just fail out, so it won't interrupt their process, but it'll actually keep running no matter what. And then hopefully in that app auto patch run, if they don't update it silently, it'll just get added to the list on that monthly basis and just run through again. There's another talk on this that we looked at from last year at JNUC by Jared Young. He goes a little bit more in depth on this whole process, like kind of what we're using. It's really good, so I would recommend it if you want to check that out as well. So how are we using Superman? So up on the screen is just a notification that we built to the end user so that they can see kind of what's going to be happening. So the nice thing about this is it gives them their device information that reads dynamically every time. That little icon will show what OS they're on so that they know, oh, I've seen that before. It'll give them a description of like what's going to happen. So as you can see there, you get 30 days to update your Mac OS. You have unlimited deferrals for that deferral period that's there. You can delay the notification at certain times. You can also get a date and deadline that will be provided. We've also built a few extension attributes that will show specifically like when they updated and what version they're on. And we're still working on to see like which specific app did it, so if they ran it themselves from the system settings or if they ran it through Superman, but just being able to scope off of those minor versions and major versions and when they did it last so that we can see, oh, they fit that 30-day time period or whenever Apple released it. So I'll talk a little bit more too about the support app. So if you haven't seen this before or used it, it's by Root 3. It's also open source, so anybody can go on there and use it as well. How we're using it right now is those top 4 sections are actually built in from the actual company, so you can just set whatever you want for those. But the bottom section is a set of like scripts and other applications that are just kind of put in there hidden so that it looks like they're just buttons functioning in the background. So like Oscar said, what we have now is an on-appear function. So when someone opens that from the menu bar, you'll actually see the health check and the request admin rotate. So you'll see it'll read what they're at currently. So that way, every time they go and check it, you don't have to like manually click on it and see what's going on. So the request admin's actually with SAP privileges, and the health check is just the other tool that Oscar mentioned we were using. IT support just opens up a URL. Self-service goes to the Jamf self-service page. The chat with HDC, which is our help desk central for all of campus, it'll actually open up a Baumgar remote support session so that way they can automatically chat with help desk automatically so they don't have to go and find who their local support is. And then we just added in also a provide feedback so they can directly message us, and through Power Automate, it'll send us a ticket or an email with like, oh, this app isn't working, or we're seeing this issue with this other part of the system. And then the update apps is also tied into App Auto Patch, so they can just directly click in there and just say, oh, I want to run my application updates now, so I don't have to wait for the next window pop-up. So how we use Health Check. So yeah, this is a tool that I had kind of created myself so that we could use it during migrations, and it's evolved into the beast that it is now. This was actually created after I saw one of Dan Snelson's scripts for inventory progress. But how it's built is just a large script on, like Oscar was saying, you can do recons, inventory recons, policies, Jamf Protect, and then you can also set things for individuals or a full like self-service health check if you want that. The nice thing about that from what Dan had wrote is there's settings in there for if you do like daily policies, say if like someone's computer isn't checking and for some reason you don't know why, you can set a seconds to wait on a daily policy and you can see, oh, this computer isn't checked in over 24 hours, we have to run a full health check because something is wrong or they haven't checked in a week or whatnot. A nice few other features in there is the operation mode, so you can actually choose individual policies or you can choose individual operation modes for that section. So if you don't want to run a full health check, but they need to update inventory or check for a specific policy that like another admin pushed out, you can say, I want that, or you can just run it silently in the background no matter what. We added in a webhook feature, so if you wanted to stay in the loop of what the person's doing or how often someone's running it or what mode they're using, you can actually get a readout of either Teams or Slack that will show what computer it's on, who the user is, and then what mode they actually ran it. So that way you get specifically like, oh, this person just keeps running over and over again, let's go check and see what's going on. And then another added feature is just the dialog progress. So at the bottom, you can have built-in progress, so that way they can read, I'm updating inventory, or if you want them to actually read the log of what's going on. So if an IT person wants to do some sort of progress, to see what they're seeing, you can actually read out the log that it's going off of. So all those Jamf logs of each individual piece, so that way they can stay in the loop of what's going on. So App Auto Patch, talk a little bit more about this, how we're using the self-service versus the automated updates. How we're using the production environment versus computer labs or like research environments, and then some of the customizations we made. So manual versus automated. Like I said earlier, we're using this coincided with Install-O-Mator in the background silently, but for the manual method, we have it set up with, you can initiate from that self-service button or in the support app. So that way, if someone just wants to run it and they know there's some sort of update they're waiting for, they can just run it there themselves. You can also set custom triggers because it's just off a policy. So if an IT person's helping someone, or if they just want to run it themselves, you can actually run it through terminal as well, just to initiate that actual process. And then for the automated method that we're using is set to trigger once a day. So how it works is App Auto Patch is basically a big script that runs coinciding with Install-O-Mator. Since you can use all those different blocking processes and other things, you can actually set it so that you can run it once a day, or I want it to run once a week, but it actually checks a P list on the computer, so it'll see, oh, this person ran it yesterday, and it ran at 10 p.m., but we only wanted to run once a week, so we're just going to go ahead and say, like, you're good for the week, don't worry about it. But how we're doing it is, I'll talk a little bit more about that next. But you can also do the custom triggers as well, so if you need someone to run it, you can just push that out. So how we're doing it in production currently. Right now we're doing same thing as Superman, so on a 30-day cycle. That way everything is kind of more consistent and the person will know what's happening. We're also doing 4 hours to choose defer update. So in that window you'll see there's actually an update now button or a defer button, and it gives you a list of currently what Install-O-Mator and App Auto Patch saw as out of date. So it might be one version behind, or might be another version behind, but the nice thing about this too is that say if you had exceptions for security, or somebody said, I am a developer and I can't update Visual Studio Code, you can put in, ignore list of things like, I don't want this specifically for this computer, so that way you don't get a bunch of tickets saying, hey, I can't update this right now, or I'm having issues. Another thing is if the timer expires, they'll just use a deferral, so the person can see exactly what they're seeing there, and that way they know they have a few left or whatnot. And then right now we actually put in a little customization so that normally when you use App Auto Patch straight out of the box, it'll be basically run every day if that's what your policy set to, or you can do once a week. It just depends how you're using it. But we want to be able to run it every day, but for 30 days without bothering the person every day. So what we decided to do was put a few functions there that will actually count skips. So basically we wanted to run every 3 days, so that way the person's not constantly getting notification to update over and over again. So we just put in a few functions and a little bit of math and a little bit of hope, and it worked. So far it's good. So the next thing is for labs and research environments. So we're still doing the App Auto Patch, but how we have it set is once a week. And so if you're familiar with the policies within Jamf, you can set those client-side limitations of when it can run. And since these computer labs are usually on 24/7, we have it set right now to do like a 1 week patching cycle where the policy runs after hours. So right now, like one of them, for example, is from like 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. or something like that. We have it set also so that a user doesn't have to be logged in. So if someone's not logged in, it'll just run in the background and be fine. And then we'll also get a notification that no one was logged in, so we know it'll be good to go. And then you can also set with Install-O-Mator and App Auto Patch where it can silently fail, or you can put up a notification if someone's logged in and say, hey, this needs to update, or like, we'll run it in the next cycle so you don't have to worry about it. So the next automated setup, this is let's say a workflow that we have come up with after talking with a few other Mac admins and working with the team. We needed a way to be able to set up a computer, let's say more quickly and efficiently. Having such a small team and centralizing campus, the Mac environment was a little smaller and some groups had more experiences and others didn't. And so what we wanted was to create something with computer labs and like research environments that basically it's a one touch and go and it sets the entire computer up for you. There's a little bit of back-end setup, but it works pretty well for computer labs. If you have Zoom rooms, like kiosks, those kind of things. We've toyed with the idea of using, we call zero touch for the like actual end user, but we haven't gotten that far as to actually push out to production. We'll talk a little bit more of what the manual versus automated for the automated setup is, and then we'll call the recipe for setting up this whole process. So just to give a little background for what you call like the manual method versus the automated. So normally if you have like Apple School Manager, Apple Business Manager, you'd place your correct grouping and set that computer device in that area. You would verify your scoping for your Jamf pre-stage. So if you have policies or configurations, other things, you would scope your policies after that to install software or profiles so that they get what they need. Say you sign in to initiate that enrollment, and then afterwards everything installs, you just verify you got everything it needed. So what we wanted was to automate it. So you just verify the devices in the correct group in School Manager, Business Manager, and that's it. And a very big asterisk, but I couldn't make it bigger because that is not it. So how's the recipe? So for the automated setup, what we did, and we'll go through each of these steps so it makes a little more sense, is you create your specific group in School Manager or Business Manager. You get your pre-stage set up. You get your smart groups off of that pre-stage. We have an auto login script, a set up your Mac starter script, a use with set up your Mac after a reboot. We actually added in some completion receipts as well. And then just self-service availability and how we remove the auto login at the end. So let's get into that. So when you start out, we set it up with Apple School Manager since we're at the university, and you would just be very specific on your naming scheme. So like what we were using it for is computer labs currently, but we have so many people on campus and so many groups that we had to be very deliberate on our naming schemes and where it's coming from. So working with other IT admins on campus or working with vendors, we have to be very concise of what we're saying. So you can't just put all new devices in this group because otherwise you might have a professor start their computer up and they get a computer lab set up, and that might not be what they want. So the pre-stage, what we had here, I actually got this workflow from a friend. If you guys ever use App Auto Patch, Rob Schroeder, he's actually what inspired this a little bit. He had a talk, about App Auto Patch, but he also mentioned on his website a Zoom room setup where this came from, and that's where the pre-stage got set up from there. So what you would have is you would set up your pre-stage with the setup assistant automatically going through the workflow. So that way, if you don't have that, it won't work at all. So definitely make sure that's checked. And what you'll do is just have a regular enrollment and skip all the setup assistant steps. And then it actually will create that account, as you can see. So you would just make whatever your admin account for the auto login there. And you can actually just skip the account creation. You can still add configuration profiles or policies or packages, if you want to. But that'll go into the next step after this so that you don't have to wait as long in that pre-stage setup. So smart groups for the pre-stage. So what we decided to do was we actually scoped a smart group off that automated enrollment pre-stage, and then we used that for the set up your Mac policy later on and some of the other policies. So we have that pre-stage there, and then we actually created a receipt with an extension attribute reading it, where it'll see if it's like successful or if it completed in some sort of fashion. Oh, one thing I did want to mention about this, make sure you do make the names very concise, because specific. Because when we were testing, there were a few times where names got very close together and someone scoped it into the incorrect place. So just FYI. So
also keep track of the names of like your pre-stages and stuff like that, because if you change it, your group no longer works and the process just breaks completely.
It's not very automated after that. So the next step is when you actually create your policy for when that computer goes through the pre-stage. So we're calling it the auto login policy. So basically what happens here is on that enrollment complete, you'll have that policy scope you made before off of that pre-stage, and you'll have that computer go through enrollment, and then it'll trigger off the enrollment complete and set to ongoing. And so you'll have these two scripts in there, one to set up your Mac at reboot, which was basically based off Dan Snelson's recon at reboot script, which we just kind of changed over a little bit to work for what we needed, because I'll talk about it a little bit after this. And then also another script that actually does that auto login for the account that will set in the login window for that specific management account. And then you can either do a restart payload because you'll need it to reboot into that auto login, or we just have it set inside one of the scripts that reboots for you automatically. So you only have to have a certain set there. And then one other thing we did was just add the account reset so that we know for sure it's the same password, because if for some reason in that pre-stage and the account gets messed up and, I don't know, the password gets changed somehow, we know for sure it's always going to be that specific one. So you can either make it like a basic one, I probably wouldn't do that, but you can save it in like a, one password or like another key manager so you know what it is. So the auto login script, we found this from, I think it's Joel Bruner, sorry if I messed that up. He had a script that was just for auto login. So basically it goes through, you add the variables of the username and password, which you would have set before, and then it scrambles that password like in a safe way. And then at the bottom, it'll actually set it as a auto login user. And there's a few other checks in there. It's like if you wanted like a guest account for a kiosk, you can also set that as well. But for what we're using, it worked great just to set that auto login user with the username and password. And then what we're calling the set up your Mac starter script. Basically, this is creates a launch daemon, which is self-destructing bash script that runs a policy at the next reboot. And it also confirms that your Jamf Pro server is available. So it'll actually check in there to see if something's going on. So there's a little section in there, like around 209, where it says you're checking for a recon, so basically going for inventory. So what we did is we took that and made a custom trigger for the set up your Mac policy, so that when this gets put on there, it'll actually go in, create a launch daemon. So when that computer restarts after that auto login, it actually just kicks off set up your Mac automatically. So that way you basically just sit back and watch it set up for you. You don't have to do anything. And then it also destroys itself afterwards, which is nice. And then the actual set up your Mac policy. So in this setup, you would actually create what you need with your environment. So, if you're in a computer lab or a Zoom room or whatever, what have you, you can actually go in here and create specifically what policies or software or other things you want to run. This can be set to a custom trigger, and you can either do once per computer ongoing, but you have to make sure you have that custom trigger, because that's what that script before is going to tell you what to do and what to grab and start at the end. So if you haven't used Set Up Your Mac, some of the parameters you can set are like if you have a specific log you want it to go to read later on. If you want to debug, there's a welcome dialog like Oscar mentioned earlier, but for this we definitely don't want that on because we just want it to continue installing. We set ours to restart so that we use Jamf Connect. So once everything goes through the whole process, it'll actually just go to the Connect login window and everything will start on its own. So you don't have to actually do anything. You can set things like OS minimum build and those kind of things. We're not using that for this environment, but you can also get the Teams and Slack notifications as well. So you can see if something failed for some reason or not. You can go back and troubleshoot why that happened. So this might be the window that you would see if you had created it for yourself. This would be within that process of the whole thing. After that first reboot, you would get logged in, and then the window would initiate and the policy would run, and you would get something like this where you would have computer information showing what policies are running, what software is being installed. It'll actually also show like if something failed for some reason. So that way if like an IT person or just the end user is looking at it, they can see, oh, my Chrome didn't install, so I need to go back to self-service and install it. It's been working really well so far. But the nice thing about this too is since there's those options for restarting, or you can wait for a user feedback or something, that way with the restart option, you don't have to do anything. You just let it run. It installs all the processes, and that's basically it.
Yeah, we just go back to the login screen for connect or whatever
Yeah,
you want.
exactly. And so then after that, what we did is put in a few receipts for set up your Mac. So what we did at the end also is removed that auto login account because we don't want it to initiate again. There's a few ways you can do it. You can either run that auto login script again with a blank password parameter, so that way it won't know what to log in with. You can go through and basically delete the auto login section from the property list if you want to nuke it completely. So that's an option, but you just have to remember later on that you removed it if you need it for some reason. But then we also added in at the very end that receipt so that we know it completed for that smart group. So in the very end of that policy, when your computer inventory runs, it actually drops a receipt on the computer. When it runs that recon, it'll just say, oh, I completed, I don't need to run this policy again, and I'm good to go. That's been really nice because if something goes wrong in the setup, you just wipe the whole computer again, it recons, and then it just starts the process over, so you don't have to do anything. And then we just made that extension attribute to read it off for the other groups. And then that's just the auto login script section so that you can see, you can either go through and add it as a single policy, or you can run the script again later on. Just if you want someone to be able to just get in, you don't have to wait for them to finish it. So like I mentioned, you can just add that parameter in to make it blank. You can make a guest account if you really want to, or you can just nuke that whole key in the property list so that you don't have to worry about it. And that's basically the whole process. So that way you don't have to have as much overhead waiting for something to install, set up, go through. It just goes through the entire thing all in one go. So as long as you have those scopings correctly and you have your pre-stages set up, that's basically it. And so with that, just wanted to say a few things to consider with some of the processes we mentioned. Since our campus is so large, I'm sure a lot of you guys also work in different environments that are very large. We have to talk with a lot of different groups. So like Oscar mentioned, a lot of stuff with security. We have like an engineering group. Also just the other IT groups on campus. There's been a lot of discussion and planning for different workflows that people have needed. So just a lot of planning goes into that. Construct and organize. So like we said earlier, with it being such a large environment and trying to automate things, the naming schemes have been a big deal. So being very concise and deliberate with how you name those things has been very important. And then also just creating the templates for your environment. So you can use those scripts over and over again, but you change one variable or you change one name. So that way, if he comes in later on and says, oh, I need it for this thing, all you got to do is, oh, I'm just going to change parameter 1 and 2 and I'm good to go. So that way it's very consistent also. So that way if another person joins your team, you don't have to try and explain, nuclear theory or something to them. And then test some more. I don't know how I can reiterate that more. We have tried so many variations of different things to try and get this to work. Thanks a lot to some of the other Mac admins we've talked to on Slack and whatnot of how to get it to work. We've gone through a lot of wiping devices of different versions and styles that it's finally working now.
Yeah. There's also there's been some anomalies too that we've ran into while testing this kind of stuff. For example, there was a disability resources that we were working on, and the one device that we were testing on refused to go through the process. Just like it did not work. Nothing was. We thought we had something wrong in our process. Turns out it was the specific device. As soon as we switched to something else, everything was fine, and we had to delete the record for this one specific device for it to actually properly pick up everything, and we don't really know why that was happening. So just keep testing.
Yep. So you will run into those things. And then going off of that, just documenting that process. Since there are a lot of moving parts in this, just make sure you keep that document up to date and well documented. And the last thing is just speak with other Mac admins. So when we were starting to figure out how we could get some of these processes to work, I would be lying if I said I knew what I was doing. So speaking with some other people in the Mac admin Slack and other people at universities and companies and just our team in general, we were able to kind of Frankenstein this process together into what it is now, into what is automated. But yeah, just make sure you guys ask questions because we definitely wouldn't have been able to figure it out if it wasn't for some of the other Mac admins that we talked with. With that, we have some resources. The QR code is not on there, but there's another one on the next page. When the slides come out, you'll be able to use those links to get what you might need. And then just some Q&As. So we have the feedback survey for the Sketch process, and then each one of our kind of contact informations and GitHubs. We have a bunch of scripts, tools, and other things for the conference that we talked about on here within those accounts on our GitHubs. So you guys, if you have questions or if you just want to grab some of those tools to use for your own environment, you can go to our GitHub and find the presentation notes. And once we get the video recording and other slides, we'll also put it on there. So
the resources are also in that little Google Doc that's per room. We put it on there yesterday, so that links to the GitHub that has the list of the tools and just things that we talked about as well.
Yeah. So with that, thank you. People have questions. We're here. All right, we'll see how this goes. Someone want to toss this back there so I don't nail somebody's drink? Can I ask for some help? I think it's back there.
Hello.
There we go.
What are your thoughts about using the built-in Jamf Mac apps versus something like Installamator? Like, when would you use one and not the other?
Yeah. So we have been looking into using the Mac apps itself. We have had more success with Installamator and like App Auto Patch and those kind of things, just because our environment is so large and kind of dynamic that being, I guess, siloed into one specific thing might not work for us. Having the option to, customize a workflow or, pick specifically for, specific apps has helped us out a lot. So
it's just not as big either.
Yeah.
There's more variety in Installamator than in that one. I will say, I think we've used it more for patching only when we tested it instead of deploying anything, because there were some other issues with deployments, something about like deleting the applications and getting it back again.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely Installamator.
Yeah, I think for us at least, it was just the variety of applications we needed. So since, the catalog is getting larger and it's getting better, but being able to just pick and choose specifically what we needed and, scope those policies off what we wanted, that was just better for what we needed. So
also with the GUIs that we use, the Mac apps doesn't really adapt to all that.
yeah,
So
we like to be able to customize for what we need. So that was the other part.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Back there.
I think it's very back. Playing baseball now.
Okay. All those tools are fantastic, but has your ISO or any security folks had any input on this? Because we have a lot of issue with open source applications right now on campus, stuff we're looking to get approved, but
Yeah.
any insight into that piece?
Not really. For us, I kind of work with security consistently, and a lot of the stuff that they do and we do is just we do a lot of open source in general, and to an extent we've gotten free reign into Jamf because we are the experts, right? So a lot of the stuff that we've done, one of our team members actually went to security as well, so they're kind of also versed a little bit in like, hey, this is what they're doing and why it's okay. So we haven't really had that much issue with open source stuff. The only issue, I guess, has come with like the TikTok ban kind of stuff that just had to happen. But otherwise, not really.
Yeah, I think also, at least with what he was saying, is being able to feed logs of different things straight into Protect and Elastic. So that way the security team's more open to letting us try open source projects as well. Obviously, like if you have a large company product that you buy, you have those already, but being able to like script and code things straight into Elastic and Protect, they are a lot more happy being able to like get that immediate feedback. So if something was wrong, hopefully it'll be okay with it, and then we can pivot from there. But
Thank you.
yeah, for sure. Yep.
I'll just walk it up.
Hello there. For App Auto Patch, is it possible to tell it only certain applications you want it to look at as opposed to everything?
Yeah. Well, yes, with an asterisk. So there are a few parameters in there where you can set like, I don't want any Office products, or I only want Chrome to run. You can put wildcards in there. So like in Installamator, you have labels basically. So like say you have Google Chrome package, but you don't want the enterprise version. You can actually put an ignored section with a wildcard, and you can say required at the bottom is the Google Chrome PKG. So you can pick and choose like kind of what you want.
Wait, but I thought you asked to only check for specific applications, is what you asked?
Right, like
Yeah.
like just maybe third-party browsers and Zoom and different things. Like a specific list that every machine's going to have, no matter what department they're in.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be Installamator? Pure Installamator might be better for
Yeah.
just like that specific, because this just goes through all your applications.
Yeah, you can like pick and choose a little bit, but it's more of we look through everything and then check if you ignored something. Installamator might be better for that because Installamator does have built-in Swift dialog as well. So, or you can create your own from other things. But for that specifically, you might want to use the Installamator script because that way you can pick, specifically Chrome, and you want them on the latest version or something like that, and then you want it to run once a week. So in that case, it might just be better to use the Installamator section instead.
Yeah, otherwise you'd probably have to figure out how to exempt like 700 applications in the ignored little thing from App Auto Patch.
Yeah.
If you just want specific stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we still use both. So that way, if you want to throw one out specifically, it's like, oh, we'll just use an Installamator script versus, a whole check through.
Right.
So it might be something to consider.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. With the auto login and removing the auto login, does that mess up file vault? Or at what point do you apply file vault?
I mean, for when we've ran it, a lot of the computers are still, we haven't had as many issues with Intel as we have with the M series computers.
I mean, don't the labs keep their account, so technically like it's fine?
Yeah, so like with the account that's on there, what we're doing is we're removing that auto login, but we're keeping it as a local admin as well. So that way there's like a hidden admin, and we just use laps to like rotate that password afterwards. So that way, if we needed an account on there, it's already there, and you don't have to worry about like, oh no, someone like dropped off and the token's gone, or a file vault's like, corrupted or something like that.
And also, to be a little bit clear for that one, like for like if it's a one-to-one device, that fully automated like zero touch complete workflow doesn't completely work for that scenario, at least not at this point. This is literally just like we have 50 computers in a lab, and they just need to go and wipe everything, and they don't need to go click anything and like the setup assistant or anything like that. It just, all of them will be screaming at you about the, what's the thing?
macOS
macOS has a built-in screen reader. So that's the only thing you might have to mute if you want to, but otherwise they'll just go through everything absolutely by itself.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we haven't really seen many issues with the file vault, if that's what you're looking for.
I mean, those are not encrypted either, so,
Yeah.
because it's a lab, so,
Yeah.
They didn't want it to be.
yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah.
Back on the security thing that was mentioned before.
Compliance editor? Or
No, one of the other people asked about how have you worked with your security team to
Oh,
get some
okay,
of these
okay, yeah,
open
yeah.
source projects into your environment. I just want to, what do those collaborations look like for you? We have a lot of, so we're in healthcare, right? So we have a lot of scrutiny around anything that goes into the environment, and anything that we quote unquote don't control, right? Do they do a code review? Do they do, like, what does your security process look like before you can even deploy these things? Or are you just considered the experts, and so you're able to kind of say, oh, well, we've reviewed it?
A little bit of that, because in our environment is predominantly Windows, to be honest, right? So we're considered the experts, but also talking specifically about health, because that's actually something we have to deal with. First, we have the separation of a site for health that's just specifically them. And we've actually had to work with security one-to-one to say, okay, this is what we're planning on doing with the iPads for health. Like, what do you think? And we have a risk and compliance team that goes over, this is the options that we think that you need based on what health has told us. And they go and check everything. And we've had meetings with them in the past where they also review everything to make sure that everything looks fine. And based on the feedback of both of the health staff and security, we come up with final, like, okay, configurations and say, okay, this is what you're getting, at least in the health area, right? For the other kind of stuff, since we are kind of the experts, right? We kind of vet a lot of the stuff of the open source things and seeing what will work better for our environment. And so since they don't know, they have a lot of knowledge in the security of like how to use the tools or like how to do stuff, but deploying and all that kind of other stuff, they defer a lot of that to us. So we kind of, not that we get final say, but like they give us a little bit more free reign, if that makes sense.
Okay,
So we
that
don't have
helps.
as much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we've also just been lucky, just to add on to that, with one of the guys who used to be on our team that's in security now. So he has like both sides of what it's like. So he can kind of decipher and, you know, translate, this thing will work better, this won't. So we're just got lucky that that happened, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Last call.
14 minutes, so.
All right, well, thank you everybody for coming out. Hopefully we gave you some tools and ideas for things to use. We're on the Mac admin Slack, so if you have questions, if you want to try stuff out, let us know. But thank you.